Welcome to the Felt Dyslexic Artist Interview. My name is Liz Buckridge. For me, as a dyslexic artist, other artists and creatives have always been my #1 inspiration. In these interviews, we talk with artists and creatives who share their stories, and we gain insight into their process, from inspiration to art tips, career building, and more. We're so lucky to listen to the wisdom of Kelsey, hold on, Miller, working memory, dyslexic, Kelsey Miller. I said it 5 seconds ago. I'm so excited to hear about her past and future projects and her insights on life as an artist. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for talking with us today.
Thank you for coming.
I'm so excited to hear all your answers. So first up, describe the art you make. What medium do you primarily work in, and why did you choose that medium?
So my background in art started with printmaking. So that originally was my primary medium, but I would say I've definitely expanded far beyond that now. And so I work in anything from cyanotype, still printmaking, letterpress, some watercolor painting lately. So it's I build imagery and layers using whatever kind of medium makes sense to the process or to what it is that I want to communicate. Was there part 2 of that?
There is a part 2
that I missed.
No, I
It's hard to remember.
Well, I know. Trust me. So do you work in any other mediums besides that?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I just answered it. Beyond printmaking, I don't consider myself as a medium specific artist. I would say it's just whatever tool process that makes most sense for communicating what it is that I'm trying to
that answer. How did you get into making art? Can you tell us about your background and how you first became interested in art?
Yeah, I grew up in a family with creatives. My parents, both of them, my aunt. So it wasn't an unusual track to follow. And I went to a Waldorf school for elementary school, so there's a lot of handwriting and painting and working with the hands there. And then I just kind of continued that through high school. And then when I started college, I thought I was taking just normal amount of art classes. I was at a liberal arts school, and I just realized that taking 1 or 2 art classes per semester wasn't what everybody did. And that's kind of how I realized that I would be more focused on that, and how I became a studio art major in the liberal arts.
Get that. How did you get into your specific style? What themes or subjects inspire your work?
I would say, I mean, circling back a little to the question on media, it's hard for me to describe a specific style, but what I think inspires me is my surroundings. And so that can be landscape, or it can be like informational, like the news, or like any kind of information that I'm receiving. And so my style, I think, is like, what information am I taking in? How do I process that and kind of put that into the artwork that comes out? So my style sometimes is completely abstract, and sometimes it's pretty representational. And even though for me it's all connected, I think other people could look at a series of my work and think it came from different people, even though to me it all seems connected. I think kind of more specifically, besides surroundings, lately I've been more focused on landscape and kind of natural environment. And taking the time to absorb that, and that's what I think about in my work, like how do I create something that maybe gives viewers like a moment of reflection or contemplation.
I see that. I'm obsessed with your moons. And
That's
the blue, like the
Yeah.
indigo.
So the blue mostly is from the cyanotype process. It's a result of that.
It's cool. It's really, really special. Do you consider yourself neurodivergent or neurotypical?
I would say neurotypical based on your description earlier. I think that was a really interesting way of thinking about it. Like, do you think the school system is designed for your kind of brain function? I think it was for me.
You?
Yeah. I appreciate it.
Have you faced any challenges or setbacks in your art career, and how did you overcome
I think the challenge, a big challenge of being a creative is just being committed to the practice of it. I think that if you're not a creative person, then you might look at artists and think it's just like easy and fun and we're just like making pictures all day, but it takes a lot of practice, it takes a lot of research and commitment. And I think like setbacks are when you don't have an idea or you're trying to work through an idea and it's not really coming out in the way that you intended to. And I think overcoming that circles back to the idea of practice and just like committing to time in the studio and keeping working on it. I really like the analogy of like sports or musical instruments because you can't just go into like a match and play the game without having a lot of practice and learning the drills, building up to that. I mean, same with a musical instrument, you're not just going to walk up, pick up a violin and play a concert. You need to learn the scales and all of the things that build up to that point. And I see the creative process very much as like a practice and like a regard as well.
It's a good tip. Time in. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the Caribbean on an island called Antigua. I lived there until I was 10, and then I was back and forth between there and Western Massachusetts. So two very different climates, but I appreciated both of them. And yeah, that's kind of how I landed back in New England, probably.
Did you do art when you were a little kid?
Yeah, so I think that drawing and painting was just always a part of my life for as long as I can remember it. It seems like just a normal part of everyday life, whether in school or out of school.
Do you have memories of making anything when you were little? Like what? Do you remember like what medium?
It's probably drawing with like most of the things that kids use now, markers and colored pencils. My dad worked with acrylic paint, so I'm sure I did some of that as well. I didn't start printmaking until high school, so that kind of printmaking foundation came a little bit later. Yeah, in childhood it was more just the basic, whatever was around.
Do you have a favorite colorway for your art? And is the colorway for your art the same or different as the colors in your house?
Not consciously, but I think blue is very strong in my work. Because I grew up in the Caribbean, I also grew up sailing, and I like later on in life spent time working on sailboats. So I've been very much surrounded by the ocean my entire life, and so I think that has just been a part of my work as well, and a color that I find comfort in. My house is like every room almost is a different color, which I know most people have all white walls and like the clarity of that, but So yeah, the colorway is in my house is probably a little more diverse than the colors in my work.
What colors are in your house?
They're still light. I've got like sage green, kind of a peachy pink, tan, like a mud tan color. Light blue as well. Yeah, gray. Still kind of earthy tones, I guess. Yeah.
And then it's white here.
Yeah. Studio space, I think, the white is just a good, a blank slate for things. Yeah.
That's what I'm finding.
Yeah.
Everyone's studios.
White, yeah, I actually don't think I've ever seen a studio that wasn't white. But yeah. Yes.
So that leads me to describe the space where you make your art.
Yeah.
Yeah, where are we?
We are in my studio. It was originally a dilapidated two-car garage with a dirt floor, and chicken coop over there. And then kind of when I was finishing up, graduate school where I did have a studio at the school, I realized in order to maintain the momentum of that practice, that the options were either to find a studio space to rent or to create one at home, and kind of made that financial decision that I'd rather like invest the money in something that would give back to me in the future. And so now it's, yeah, it's clean, it's white, it's big open, mostly open space,
Short commute.
good work tables around the exterior and the short commute, yeah.
That's awesome in here. I walked in, I'm like, okay, yeah, this is how to do it.
That's, I mean, I went into another artist who had a studio at his home, and that was kind of the thing that stuck with me for a number of years before doing this. But yeah, it was like seeing someone else's space at home that they had built that instigated that.
Yeah, it's awesome. So how did your school system support your interest in art growing up?
Do you like all the way from very beginning, like full education? I think so. I moved to the US in fourth grade. That's when I started in the Waldorf school, which was very kind of art and hand work focused. Prior to that, honestly, I don't have much recollection about art in school. I think it was always there, like art class, but I think the real growth was started around fourth grade for me. And then I went to a high school that really valued the arts in their curriculum and had the opportunity to try all kinds of things from making jewelry, weaving, printmaking, painting, drawing, normal stuff, but like, or the typical things as well as like a little bit more expensive. So I think I was fortunate in always having good opportunities in the schools that I was in to be able to keep kind of feeding that creative practice.
How do you see your work evolving or changing in the future? What do you have planned?
Oh, that's a good question. Right now, so actually in June, I was on an artist residency in the desert of Nevada. It was a solo residency, so I was in a cabin with a studio space next to it for 2 weeks without anybody around, without cell service, and it was a really intensely focused time, and that's what all of this stuff is that's around the studio right now and over there. So I think the future work is kind of happening right now, because what is in store is like, that was a time of production, and now I have a bit of time to reflect on what I made and like kind of expand on it and think like, what can I do with that kind of visual information that I collected.
Can you walk us through your creative process from idea to finished piece?
Yeah. I feel like I keep answering the questions. right
One question before.
But I can expand on that.
Okay.
So I think my process is very kind of reflective and responsive of what I'm taking in. And so my process is, I think like the context of this residency is a good example to describe it, and that it's just like observational and trying to record the visual information that is engaging me, whatever that is. So sketchbook, photos, short paintings, writing, all of that. So it's like collect, and then kind of put it all out and see what through lines I'm noticing from the things that I was like collecting, and then like visual or thematic through lines, and then maybe like how can I take that and expand on it. I also like to work on large scale like installations, or just like large scale work, and so that collection process is usually smaller. So then I'm looking at it and thinking like, what can I do with this to bring it up in scale? Like how might it be served at a different scale? So I think, yeah, I think the process is just kind of collecting, reflecting on it, revising, making something new, and kind of cyclical like that, and building in layers. I think this kind of weaves in two of the earlier questions, like setbacks and primary medium. So I think oftentimes it's easy to get frustrated with like during the process. Maybe it's not the original vision you had in your head, but in my process, if it's not working out, then I try and take a step back and think like, what can I add to it? And I think that's where the print making background really benefits me, because printmaking is like a slow process of building images one layer at a time. File passes through a press like this, and so even if I'm not making prints, I might think about like what can go on top of this, or what part of this image do I want to show through, and what do I want to cover up. And that, yeah, say that's kind of the cycle until I arrive at something that feels balanced, or else it's overworked and it didn't work out. That happens too.
I'm really curious about, like, have you done murals? Like, how big do you go?
I've done a couple of murals. I've also done exterior murals, painted, as well as with prints. So another part of the printmaking process that I really appreciate is the ability to accumulate many parts to make something larger. So you know, like that piece over there with the mud. It's like many pieces that were small, but then I put them together and it made something big. So I made like full wall size mural using prints of that size. And I've also done like it for probably I think 3 shows now, graphite wall drawings using graphite powder directly drawing on walls. That's an example. That was a test piece, but I've done like the full size of that wall in a few different locations, and then it's up for the duration of the show, and then it gets painted over. So part of like that ephemerality of the work is something that I think is connected like conceptually as well.
How do you combine the art you love to make and the art you sell?
Yeah, good question. Something I'm working on, because you can't usually carry away a whole wall out of a gallery. So I'm still looking for those people that want me to come and draw on the walls of their homes, maybe. I try not to think of making my work as commercial or a commodity, because I think for me, that interrupts the authenticity of the process if I'm thinking about making work to please other people or that other people would want. So the way I teach in higher education, so my income is primarily from teaching rather than selling my artwork, which I think allows me to be a little bit more open in my work. But saying that, I do things like make calendars and make smaller scale things that people do want, but whenever I'm doing that, I'm really conscious of making sure it's authentic and not like, what should I make to sell?
Where's
Is there
the teach?
another part of that? Did I cover it?
You covered it. I mean, I think that, yeah, it's just combining the art you love to make and the art you sell. I think
Yeah.
you just make the art that you love.
I just make the art that I want to make, and if people choose to buy it, then that's great, but if not. And that's also why I appreciate being able to do something that is like ephemeral. I saw you getting like a little uncomfortable about the idea of just wiping
I
a
get
drawing
it.
off a wall, but it's also like, I don't want to just accumulate stuff, so. So that's part of it, and also like, kind of back to subject, like our landscape is always shifting, so my work can come and go as well. I teach, right now I teach in Boston at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts, which is the Tufts Art School. And I was last year teaching also at a private high school in Boston for one position, but mostly Boston art schools.
How do people find your art to purchase?
On my website. Yeah, I don't have a store all the time. Sometimes like I put it up seasonally, like usually in the winter. KelseyVBMiller.com, or you can Google Kelsey Miller artists and it'll come up. So when I do have things, I'll put up a store on my website. Otherwise, people can just contact me through their link with that one.
Well, we'll put that information in the show notes. Can you share a recent project or a piece of work that you're particularly happy about?
Yeah. I think like what I have out right now is everything that I brought back from the residency, and it's kind of exciting for me because it's describing like, or it's an example of both of the styles that I was talking about in terms of some things being more abstract, some things being really representational. And like from my viewpoint right now, what I'm staring at is this like panel of cyanotypes that I made using cracked mud and exposing that on light sensitive paper. And that was exciting for me because I think it's a really good example of just like trying something, maybe it didn't quite come out how I wanted, then what do I adjust in my process and try something else. And so all of those individual pieces weren't necessarily successes for me, but then I put them together on one page and I think together they're working really well. Visually, it feels like a balanced piece. So I like that idea of just like holding on to things through the process while you're figuring it out and working on it until it's working.
We'll have to take a picture.
Yeah.
When we're done. It's very cool. I know you're like full immersion and also capturing a moment in time.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's your.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I really think about time a lot and just trying to be present and what is it from this moment now, especially when I was on that residency, it was like, what can I do only here?
Are there any artists or creatives who have influenced or inspired your work?
I would say that changes a lot, really depending on what I'm focused on. But one artist that I turn to often is Via Salmons, and she also works in a range of media from acrylic painting or painting, printmaking. She also makes sculpture, cast bronze, and so kind of circling back to that question of style, what I appreciate about her is that she works in a range of media, a range of styles, and it's not like constrained by trying to create like a brand or an image for yourself. And she also, her work is very much like kind of memoir, like representation of her lived experiences, which I really relate to as well. And so yeah, visually speaking, it would be her. There's also a writer, Terry Tempest Williams, and so skipping forward again to your coming up, but I think like reading has been a really big influence on my creative like visual practice as well.
What advice would you give to an aspiring artist looking to pursue a career in the arts?
Just keep showing up. That practice is like, even if you don't have to feel inspired to be making forward progression as an artist. Like if you don't feel like you have an idea, that doesn't mean that studio time isn't valuable. So I think the advice is like stick with it and keep working and keep an active schedule.
What is your favorite book, movie, song, podcasts?
So most recent book that I read is called Braiding Sweetgrass. And then so late, like I think my time in Nevada, I became really interested in like even more interested in like memoir and kind of scientific books. I was reading field guides and farmers almanacs and that kind of thing. But also Terry Tempest Williams, all like a handful of her books, When Women Were Birds and The Hour of Wind those are the kind of books that I'll like keep returning to. And it's like and Braiding Sweetgrass also like memoir. So they're all books that kind of reflect with words what I would like to do visually in my work. Oh yeah, the other thing. So song, there's a band called Lucius, and they're probably my favorite band of all time, but a number of years ago I saw them playing in Boston at the ICA right on the waterfront, and they played a new song that they hadn't even named yet. It's called Dusty Trails, and it's probably the only time that I can remember like having a physical reaction to music where I had goosebumps and tears from hearing the song. So I'd say that's at the top of the list. Podcast, did you say? I don't think I have an answer for movie. Podcast. I like storytelling, This American Life, and I listen to the Moth Radio Hour a lot. Yeah, those are probably at the top. Sometimes I get sucked into like true crime podcasts, but I don't think they're enriching, so I avoid it. It's best.
What I think I know I don't think I know the answer to this, but what book, movie, song, or podcast do you recommend over and over to people?
Yeah. Book, movie, song. Yeah. I mean, all of those that I mentioned, but I think when I'm recommending things to people, it's more focused on what do I think would benefit them rather than what do I like the most. So I have like a good kind of handful, I guess, of books that I would like, that I'm familiar with. And it really just depends on like the moment, the person, the conversation, like maybe our conversation reminds me of something. And then I'd say, like, you should check out this book. But
Have anything for dyslexic artists?
dyslexic artists, same, why not? I mean, I do think that Braiding Sweetgrass and Hour of Land, have you read Braiding Sweetgrass?
No, but I figured that was gonna be.
Yeah,
the thing you
I mean,
suggested.
that's the thing, I read this just most recently. Both of those are very much about like being connected to your surroundings and your environment. So I think it's just like whatever it is to get you like focused on what's around you and not and trying to like shut out a lot of outside distractions.
What do you want to talk about that I didn't ask?
I don't think I have anything. Do you have any new questions that we didn't touch on? I feel like I think your questions were really like thorough in being able to touch all the areas of what I would think about for sure.
I did my job then.
Yeah,
Yay.
I think so.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kelsey Miller. I just playing dyslexic thing, for letting us into your studio today. I felt inspired for sure. You're very inspirational.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. Thank you so much and much love. And we'll see you next time.
Sounds good.
Yay.
Thank you. I appreciate it.